Chargers released LA Football Network. We have the one and only Rodgers here, NFL Stock Exchange, PFF savant, NFL Draft Guru. I mean, you got it. He's here for you. Jamal Madney, Will Decker, Dan Wolkenstein. Connor, thanks for joining us, man. On behalf of Sports Not LAFB, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here, man.
I love it, man. Radio Row's crazy. It's buzz everywhere. Heads on a swivel. How's it been for you so far?
It's been awesome. I mean, just the amount of people you get to talk to out here, the amount of different shows you get to do. It's kind of like a reunion. A lot of people you only see once or twice a year. Everybody's here. And it's a good mix, right? Because people want to talk about the game. People want to talk about, with me at least, the NFL draft, which I can't get enough of course. The offseason will be at the Combine in 2 weeks. It's just when everything really starts getting rolling to a new NFL season while we get ready to close one out.
I love it.
Yeah, man. You guys do the Stock Exchange, one of my favorite draft shows out there. Who are some of the guys that need to increase their stock, in your opinion, going into the Combine in 2 weeks? It's the biggest spectacle leading up to the draft. Who are some guys that you're looking to, like, hey, if this guy balls out in this situation, he could be a fringe first rounder?
I think all the eyes are on the quarterbacks, and I know that's cliche, and it's not necessarily Caleb Williams and Drake May. I feel pretty good that they're going to go 1 and 2. We'll see if those teams even want to answer the phone. I would be shocked. But you look at you start after that, right? Jaden Daniels, what's he going to weigh in at, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be a big thing for him. When you get to Michael Penix, I've heard really good news on the medicals, but teams are wondering, are they getting the same news? So I think they will. And I think that's a great opportunity for teams to sit with guys like Penix and Bo Nix that are older prospects in this draft. They could go in the first round and get to kind of know, hey, you faced adversity, you transferred, and had a ton of success. Bo Nix obviously elevated that Oregon offense. Penix, going from Indiana to Washington, he was the cog for that Washington offense that went to the national title game. And then you want to talk about a guy that won the national title in J.J. McCarthy, but he doesn't really get the credit for being the reason why. That was an amazing defense. They could run the ball. Obviously, we're going to talk Harbaugh at some point. That's what he's known to do. But McCarthy's a younger quarterback with a big arm athleticism that we've seen those guys go into the draft process, and they seem like developmental day 2 picks. And then you get to the draft, and somebody's going to take them in the first round. So that's why the quarterbacks, it matters so much, because all it takes is one team to believe in you, and you don't get cute like you do with other positions where you go, maybe I can fill that need in the second or third round. Right. You like a quarterback, you take the quarterback.
Yeah. And as if you're focusing on the Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, they obviously don't need a quarterback. They got Justin Herbert, but teams behind them could. Chargers, I think a lot of fans would like them to possibly trade back. Who are some teams that you think would possibly trade to that number 5? And if they were for the quarterback, who would it be?
I mean, you don't have to look very long, right? The Giants could flip with them from 6 to 5 if other teams are calling. You can look at the Falcons at 8. They can come up to 5. And then you have the big 3, right? This is the one I'm warning everybody about. You have the Vikings, Broncos, and Raiders all clustered together. I've already heard all 3 teams are doing the homework on the quarterback class this year heavily. This has already begun. You have Kevin O'Connell. We don't know what the situation is going to be with Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
We do know what the situations are in Denver and Las Vegas. They're going to need quarterbacks. Yeah. That's absolutely the truth for Sean Payton and Antonio Pierce. So I think when you look at that, it's hard to imagine them sitting in their spots and just getting a guy unless they're comfortable with the Knicks, Penixes of the world. And then do you have to go up to get somebody? Does this draft just go Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels to New England, and then everybody's in this staring contest of how it's going to go? But if you're the Chargers, you don't want to move further than that, because I think you do want, whether it's a marquee wide receiver, I should say pass catcher, because we should include Brock Bowers in that.
Sir.
If you want to take a tackle and improve this offensive line and kind of have a bookend with Rashawn Slater, I think that's a more controversial discussion.
At 5 especially.
At 5 especially, but it might become a little bit more intriguing if you did that at 12 or 13 with extra draft capital to maneuver throughout the rest of the draft. So really that 5 to 10 spot, that's a pivot spot where we could see teams. Because if you're the Cardinals at 4, why would you answer the phone if Marvin Harrison Jr. fell into your lap? You shouldn't. So you talk about teams actually moving, it feels like 5 to 10 is where it gets interesting.
Connor, I want to segue a little bit to some of the LA college guys. Okay. You know, some of the non-Caleb LA college guys. We've got the 2 UCLA guys in particular, Leatu Latu, and very curious about your thoughts there in terms of fit, upside. Darius Moasau at linebacker, as well as, I think, raising some eyebrows. And then the 2 USC receivers, Taj Washington and Brendan Rice. How do you think about that quartet in terms of fit, upside, and and what your projections are.
I think with Latu, this is one where it's fascinating because there was no more productive pass rusher in college football in this draft over the last 2 years. And in terms of how polished he is, we got to see it at the Senior Bowl. And really, I mean, guys that play D-line, I'm standing next to on the field are looking at me and like, this kid knows not only how to set up his moves, but how to counter.
Yeah.
College kids don't do that. You're typically all speed to power, speed rush. You might see a couple inside moves. Now the kids are trying out the spin move more frequently. With Latu, I mean, we saw him at the Senior Bowl hit a spin move that didn't work and able to counter it with his hands to work inside. He is so polished. He's so into the game. The best way to explain it with him is this is somebody that football was taken away from him at Washington. He was medically retired. He gets cleared. It was a long road back. He goes to UCLA, and he dominates for 2 years. And every single snap is treated like it actually is his last football snap.
Yeah.
And I think the way he takes care of his craft, the way he's developed, you know what you're getting, and you never say that about a college pass rusher. Maybe Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa because they're a different breed. But Latu, he has the medical history. He's simply not going to test like Dallas Turner is going to test, like Chop Robinson is going to test. He's going to be, I think, more of an average tester. So you're probably looking 15 to 25 for Latu, but you're getting a really, really good player. He'll probably be ranked higher than that.
Imagine him to the Rams.
Floor. I mean, that's just an insane conversation to think about. I don't want to miss out on the wide receivers here because I got to talk to Brendan Rice at this event, and I got to see him at the Senior Bowl last week, and I was just blown away when you see a 6'3", 210-pound wide receiver that really dominates physically. He likes to play above the rim. It's interesting when you talk to them and realize it's no surprise, son of Jerry, how serious he takes his craft, how much of a technician he is. He told me, because he was really giving the corners at the Senior Bowl a problem, he was watching all of their film before each practice to learn what their tendencies were and how to beat them. And it showed up on the field. He's really loud. He lets you know it after he catches a pass on you. But it's funny, when you sit with him one-on-one, he's a pretty soft-spoken, very mature, humble guy for a 21-year-old and very confident. And he's already been faced with some adversity. Transferred from Colorado, where he wasn't really a big-time player. He goes to USC, and he caught 12 touchdowns this year. With Taj... by the way, 12 touchdowns, pretty decent. With limited targets, I think that's a big thing, too. With Taj, I wasn't at Shrine, but it sounded like he had a really good Shrine week. And
was unguardable.
Unguardable. And that doesn't surprise me. I did summer scouting on him, and he could simply run away from people. And when you go through scouting wide receivers at its absolute baseline, and it gets more complex than this, you either have to be a technician, really polishing your game, or you have to run away from people. And to me, Taj runs away from people, and the rest can come later as well.
The Rams are in a very interesting position. They had their first-round pick, and it feels like since the new millennium came around, it's been a long time. This is coming off of a hell of a draft for them, too. Puka Nacua, Kobe Durant, and then you got Kyron Williams a year before. They're building this young nucleus. It seems in the early parts of this, they're looking at either a tackle or a corner. If you were the Rams and Les Snead, who would you be leaning towards taking for the future of the Los Angeles Rams?
It's always going to come down to how the board falls. And I know that's a cop-out answer, but the reality in this draft, for those two positions, it is because it's deep at corner and it's deep at tackle. So for the Rams, it's a situation where, hey, Amarius Mims fell to us, and if he had a good year and stayed one more year in college, he'd be a top 8 pick because of the size and the footwork and the traits that he has that he was born with, not the things that he was taught. But then you look at the corner class and go, we saw Quinyon Mitchell at the Senior Bowl. He's going to go in the first round.
Unbelievable talent.
Yeah. Terrion Arnold from Alabama. I mean, the trajectory he's on with his athleticism, he was phenomenal this year. His teammate Kool-Aid McKinstry, who wasn't tested because he was so good the year before. I mean, Cooper DeJean is really interesting because I think he could play every single spot in the secondary, and he's the best tackling corner in the draft.
Those Iowa guys, man.
They all know how to tackle. But the ball skills, I mean, you could see why he was a guy that could play offense as well. The ball skills, the body control, he can toe tap. He's obviously somebody they've even used on offense at times as a returner. So the Rams are in a good spot at this draft because their two needs align with what the depth of this class has, and it's just a matter of what you value them there and then what you're going to do in the second round. I would probably say, and ironically, we feel like we don't say this, I would maybe take the corner in the first round this year and try to get the offensive lineman in the second round, which they just had success with Stephen Vila. Yeah, 100%. You want to talk about finding... McVay's a very good offensive line scout. He knows who fits his complex run scheme. I trust the Rams to get offensive line talent on day 2.
And before I give it back to Danny Dub, if Fuaga is there, the Oregon State tackle, this guy was special at the Senior Bowl. It was two battling Rams with Latu. If he's there at 19, would you seriously consider that over a quarter?
I think they would run in the card.
Yeah.
I think Waga's an ink in the top 12 at this point, which speaks to the kind of year he had, honestly.
Yeah.
All right, so Chargers, the whole phrase of "We are the storm" now. Jim Harbaugh now in LA, kind of bringing fireworks all over the place. Him now at the helm. Obviously, you don't need a quarterback at 5, but what does Jim Harbaugh bring to them in terms with Joe Ortiz from the Ravens, which is kind of a really integral part in draft and offseason? What does the draft look like for them with those two guys?
I think they want to line up and punch you in the mouth right across from you. And that's very simple football guy talk, but it's something the Chargers maybe have been missing for a little bit. Yep. And it's something that in that division, you are going to have to do to survive. I mean, we were talking to Max Crosby today. The way the Raiders are going to build, that's how the Raiders are going to be. The Raiders are going to run the ball right at you, and they're going to be the big bad bullies. The Chiefs, everybody gets caught up because of the aura of Mahomes. The Chiefs are a physical, run the ball, play defense team. Sean Payton's going to have the Broncos humming the same way. The Chargers need to keep up. The best thing is they got one of the best guys in all of football in Harbaugh to do that. Ortiz comes from Baltimore. He knows how to build it. You're going to build the offensive line. You're going to be a tough team. It also makes you wonder, is this a team that's going to value the tight end position more than others? And that's when you think of Brock Bowers at 5, because he's the best tight end prospect we've seen in how long. And people like to go, what about Kyle Pitts? Different planet. I mean, Bowers was his offense as a freshman and a sophomore player. So,
Okay.
I mean, when you look at it in that regard, I'm fascinated to see what they do, what they value, because they need help in the secondary, so you can't entirely sleep on corner, especially if they move back. You could argue they need a wide receiver, but at the end of the day, do they like their wide receiver room and trust that more than other rooms? But I think the most important thing is they want to play a little heavier. They want to protect Herbert while also having the threat of the run to open up the play-action game for Herbert down the field.
And you talked about offensive weapon earlier, like Brock Bowers, you got Malik Nabers, you got Odunze, a whole bunch of guys there. A lot of people talk about like the analytics or like the positional value piece of why not to go Brock Bowers. What do you say to the argument, or like, is there truth to that? Does it matter? Do you think teams care, or is it more like find the right player for your team at the best position?
So I would say if he was a guy that played 90% of his snaps in line, I would agree with them. But they use him like a wide receiver. So you have to ask yourself, is he actually just a tight end, or is he an offensive weapon? This is somebody that played the slot. He played out wide. He played in line. He could play in the backfield. That is a true offensive weapon. And the fact is, this is somebody that lined up outside and they threw him go balls to jump over corners to make plays. This is not, your traditional 270-pound inline tight end that's going to block 70% of his snaps. He's running real routes. He's lethal after the catch. He's lethal before the catch. He's great at the catch point. He's tough as hell. So I think that's where you have to make that distinction of usage, not position, usage, right? So, and I think that's where Bowers kind of separates himself from your traditional tight end prospect.
So if it was you, Bowers or wide receiver, pick your poison.
It would be Marv, Nabers, Bowers for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
And if you take Rome, you're not going to kill that pick because Rome's going to be a phenomenal player.
Okay.
Connor, I want to close with this. I want to ask you the Caleb Williams question. And on the one hand, when we've assessed Caleb Williams, there's the school of thought that he's a once-in-a-decade type of generational prospect. On the other hand, there's been some leadership concerns, particularly with his year at USC. Yeah. How do you evaluate Caleb Williams overall as a prospect, and what would you do at 1 if you were Chicago?
Well, I think the talent is incredible. There's no denying that. I wouldn't go as far to say as he's, the best since Luck or whatever. We've done this with Trevor Lawrence. We've done this with, Joe Burrow, quarterbacks over the years. I think Caleb, deserves to go number 1 overall, and he's worthy of that talent. I think his play style, where it got a little carried away, was, a lot of people like to compare him to Mahomes this summer. I think he plays a little bit more like Kyler Murray right now, and that's not to mean that he can't grow into something. Kyler is very good, by the way. It's funny how people have a perception of Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
But I think with Caleb Williams, it almost doesn't matter necessarily what I think of that situation in terms of the intangibles, what the teams get at the NFL Combine, and we're going to know. If he goes number 1 overall, teams sat with him at the Combine and heard everything they had to hear. They went into USC and talked to people that coached him, worked with him, his teammates, and the only guy I've talked to about him that had a direct relationship with him was Brendan Rice, and Brendan Rice will stand on the table for Caleb Williams like it was his own brother. I mean, and that means a lot. He was his wide receiver quarterback connection. So I'm not buying the downfall because of that. I think that what you can say is he's had a little bit of adversity this year, and it did not go well. And there are other guys in this class, like Penix, like Nix, that are older, more experienced, like Sam Hartman, that have handled adversity already. So that's what teams are going to want to know with Caleb Williams. But in terms of the talent, it's just undeniable. And that's why you take a guy like that number 1 overall. And you need to distinguish as an evaluator. is this guy immature or is he highly competitive? Because there is a weird fine line between the two.
Interesting.
Yeah, I see that completely, man. Well, I just want to thank you so much for coming on, dude. I mean, it's the Stock Exchange is one of the best shows out there. It's an honor to be talking ball with you, man.
Thank you, guys.
We got to get you out of here with your predictions. We got Connor Rodgers having to predict Rams, Chargers. You can do day 1, or you can go round 1 and 2. But Chargers, Rams, who are their predicted players that they select?
I'll go Bowers.
For the Chargers.
For the Chargers.
Fun, yeah.
For the Rams, this is where it gets a little bit more trickier as we go down the board. I'll say corner. I'll say we'll go Quinyon Mitchell.
Cool. I mean, come on, man.
You squirted that card in for sure. For sure. Connor, man, thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely.
So pumped to see what you guys keep doing. Keep publishing. Keep pushing, dude. You guys are crushing it.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
All right, man. Thanks so much.